Hey YouTube, thank you for coming to my channel and for watching this video. This video is for the archers out there. I guess in my specific instance, I'm talking about the compound bow hunters. This whole video is about arrow penetration, specifically the factors involved with arrow penetration. As far as I'm aware, this is the really, truly the only source of information, true research and study that has been done on the factors of arrow penetration when it comes to live animals. I am not going to talk about arrow penetration tests. I don't care about those. But I'm brand new to hunting. I've given that disclaimer on a couple of my videos, but I have never, the only thing that I've ever actually killed was a turkey. I did that with a gold tip, pretty wide diameter mechanical broadhead for specific reasons. But I am talking about big animals, let's say anywhere from deer to elk, or even beyond that, but I don't hunt anything bigger than an elk. Again, I've never killed anything, but I wanted to learn myself, not listening to other people, other than fact-based information on what would work best for killing an elk, because that's what I mainly hunt, is elk. But I came across, I'm sure a lot of you know who he is, but the Ranch Fairy on YouTube. And I gotta thank Troy Fowler for putting out this information, making this information popularized, because I don't think many people take their arrow setup as seriously as what they should. And it creates a loss of animals. It creates wounding of animals when things go wrong. And let me preface by saying that a lot of this stuff, the stuff that Ranch Fairy talks about, he talks about building heavy arrows. That's what he's known for. He talks about all the other factors too, but that's what he's known for. People shit on him for making 700 grain arrows. But there's a reason for it. And I don't think that, we're stuck in this part of the industry where everybody wants to sell you the fastest bow and shooting arrow that they can find. And that's where a lot of these things go wrong. They're doing research on how to make a faster bow, but nobody is talking about the momentum that it takes to get through an animal, especially when it comes to when shit goes wrong and you're hitting a big bone. So let's start off with, I won't go through every one of the 12 factors. I kind of want to go through the ones that I have taken into consideration with my arrow setup. But let's go with structural integrity. So right here, I have a 340 grain Hunter Pro gold tip. I don't know. Oh, I actually have a insert that popped out on me, not glued properly by the people that made the arrow, but the insert is 12 grains, so hardly anything, but still takes into effect how to build the arrow. 12 grain insert inside of here, and I think this is a 100 grain field tip. So this whole arrow weighs 400 grains with 100 grains, 112 grains up front. So 400 grains, that's going to shoot pretty quick through a high kinetic energy bow, high IBO. I don't understand the IBO thing. I don't care about it. But that's going to shoot pretty fast through a bow. The problem with, let's just say somebody who is shooting out to 60 yards, a lot of people want to come out west and, hunt for elk. The problem with shooting out to 60 yards with 400 grains is that you lose all of your momentum as it's going through the air. I'm not talking about when it leaves the bow, because it has a decent amount of kinetic energy when it leaves the bow. The bow itself has a fixed kinetic energy. Your setup right now has a fixed kinetic energy. That's all that you're going to get out of the bow. The arrow changes that kinetic energy output, and I'm talking about in terms of momentum. Again, think about a Prius versus a truck. A Prius is going to have less momentum going at the same speed as of a truck, because the truck is going to weigh more, right? The truck is going to get through something better than what the Prius would. Just an example. Now, again, structural integrity of the arrow. This arrow has this little, very lightweight insert in it. The problem, let's just say, for instance, that we're accidentally hitting bone, that could potentially break the arrow. It can break right where the end of that insert is. If you happen to hit at a slight angle on that bone, it's all that momentum is going to come around, like the back end of the arrow is going to come around and it's going to snap that and the arrow right where the tip of the insert is. So that's number one. You basically shoot the arrow. If it hits and any part of the arrow breaks, that is not structural integrity. That is going to destroy everything, and it's not going to penetrate. So structural integrity, your arrow cannot break, no matter what. So that's the first factor. Second factor is arrow flight. Now, this was the crux of what I was dealing with my Matthews Creed XS setup. Getting everything tuned up and everything. Thankfully, I figured out how to do that finally, just recently, after over a year of researching this stuff. But getting my bow properly tuned, the issue that I still had was that my arrows were still not flying off the bow properly. Now, that was related to my rest, which is part of arrow tuning. But as soon as I got my rest to the proper place and I, again, understood how to troubleshoot bad arrow flight, everything else fell into place. So this is my arrow setup. This is the one that I made. And once I got everything tuned in properly, my issue that I was having was a couple of things. One, my rest was not placed properly. And I was actually even having the same problem with my gold tips with the field point on. My issue was that my rest wasn't set properly. And another thing that I found out very quickly is that my fletchings were hitting my rest when I shot the arrow, which was creating a corkscrew effect going down range. And this was really not accurate when I shot beyond 20 yards. But the Ranch Fairy kind of talks about how this arrow with a certain grain tip on the end or broadhead on the end will shoot differently than this arrow with this broadhead, a different arrow and broadhead. What I found with my Matthews is that as soon as I got one arrow flying properly, like perfect, this arrow, this 400 grain arrow, shot basically the exact same, aside from the trajectory, shot the exact same as this arrow, which is 640 grains. I would have to do more research, which I don't care to do right now, but I would have to do more research on different tips and whatever. But between 400 grains and 640 grains, there wasn't really a difference in how they shot. They both shot very, very accurate once I finally got it in tune. Whenever you go to a pro shop and they tune your bow, they have not tuned your arrows. they have tuned the bow. Your work as an archer is to understand how to get your arrows to fly properly off the bow. And I will do more videos on each one of these subjects, but basically, if you don't have good arrow flight, if your arrow is not coming straight off your bow, then you're losing momentum, you're losing accuracy, you're losing a lot, especially once the arrow hits the animal. Arrow shooting straight, you have no issues. Arrow shooting sideways, you are not penetrating at all. This is a very important factor when it comes to hunting, and I don't know, I don't think a lot of people, there's a lot of things that people don't take into consideration. A lot of people don't shoot these single bevel 2-blade broadheads because they're afraid of the process of tuning that arrow to the bow. It's really not as difficult. Like, after a whole year of doing this and understanding what's going on, now that I have an understanding of all this, I'll make different videos, but it's not that hard. Having a simple tool, a good rest, a good tuned bow, and you can do everything. I was able to completely retune my bow, shoot it, and sight it in within 2 hours. Once I understood all of this information, and I am brand new to this, I am just a nobody, and I was able to do this simply. So anyway, arrow flight is extremely important. It is number 2 on the priority list of the 12 factors of arrow penetration, and I think that we need to pay more attention to that. Number 3 is forward of center mass. So let's take this for instance. This arrow, it's got like the tiniest bit of FOC, but it's almost balanced evenly. The whole mass is almost at the very center of that mass. The problem with that is that wherever that center of mass is, or the FOC changes where the center of mass is. So when you shoot the arrow off the bow, it's going to flex. And where it flexes is right where that center of mass is. With a single blade broadhead, the problem with that is that the arrow is going to want to travel in the direction that the broadhead is facing. So if you flex right in the middle, that's a lot of flex that can happen. The arrow is going to want to move in that direction. It's going to correct, and it's going to want to keep going back and forth like this. FOC, when you put that weight forward, it will change where the center of mass is. So with this one, I actually need to calculate the FOC, and I'll make a video on that here in just a minute. But the balance point is really far forward from the center of the mass. So that makes the arrow flex in that position so that there's a lot less flex. That creates a more stable arrow flight, and that's actually rocket science. They do this with rockets to create a more stable rocket flight. And it's also, you got, with a single blade broadhead, you've got fletching on the front of this. So that's going to create other types of drag. So you want every factor to help you create a stable arrow flight. So I believe the other thing that FOC helps as well is if you just so happen to hit bone, then it's going to help continue to get the arrow through the body of the animal once it hits bone, assuming, and I'll get into this here in a second, assuming that you breach that bone. So once it hits bone, it becomes even more important to have FOC. So anyway, and again, I'll make a whole video on FOC and what I've learned about it. Mechanical advantage. So, where did it go? Yeah. I have these Montecs, which are actually a pretty good mechanical advantage, aside from the fact that I don't care for the single bevel, or the double bevel 3-blade broadhead anymore. I might have these as like a secondary follow-up shot arrow. We'll see. I haven't made the arrow yet. Give me just a moment. As I was saying, there's mechanical advantage. Basically what mechanical advantage is, oh, 1 second. I guess I can't find them right now. Anyway, certain broadheads are made a certain way, obviously. So you have a lot of these cheaper broadheads, and I will call them cheaper because a lot of them advertise as being cheaper. But the length of the broadhead versus the width of the broadhead. So a 1-to-1 ratio is the width is the same as the length. Think about taking your hand and trying to push through something. That's going to have less mechanical advantage than using your finger to push through something, right? It's all about surface area pressure. So a 1-to-1 ratio broadhead is going to have less mechanical advantage than a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1. The best mechanical advantage is a 3-to-1, where the length is 3 times as long as the width. Think about all the most efficient penetrators in the world. A bee stinger, or a stingray. Like, those are amazing mechanical advantage penetrators because they're extremely thin. A hypodermic needle. This is what you want to think about with mechanical advantage. A 2-to-1 is twice as long as it is wide. This is a much better mechanical advantage than a 1-to-1 ratio broadhead. It's as simple as that. So mechanical advantage is easy. That helps to penetrate better. Now, next we have shaft diameter to the ferrule diameter. So this right here, the field tip, the insert, and the shaft diameter are all essentially the same. The difference, what you would like to use, I think, is a better usage, and again, science proves this, is you want a thicker ferrule to the shaft. So this broadhead, I don't know if you can see it, but that broadhead sits just a hair wider than even the ferrule, and then the ferrule is a little bit bigger than the shaft. So what this does is, once this creates a hole, this is going to create a bigger hole, and then once the shaft starts to go in, there's going to be less friction on the shaft all the way through, obviously, up until it gets to the fletching. I learned this not only through even my own arrows, but when I shoot into my targets, especially my broadhead targets, my arrows came out so easy compared to this arrow. And my buddy's arrow, which is the same, broadhead is on here, and it grips the whole shaft because this diameter is the same as the diameter of the arrow. It is really hard to pull this out of a broadhead target. It's extremely easy to pull this out of a broadhead target. It actually comes out really freaking easy. It makes it a hell of a lot more simple to, I don't get as frustrated in pulling my skin out trying to pull those arrows out. It's the same as going into a live animal. It's going to create less friction, and the arrow is going to travel through the animal better. So that is what ferrule diameter versus shaft diameter ratio is. Arrow mass. So I'm not going to go crazy with this one, but basically 400 grains versus 641 grains. Here's the positives and the negatives of each. This arrow is going to shoot a hell of a lot faster than this one will. a lot of people will focus on the lighter arrow compared to the, like, not many people will want to shoot this arrow. And the reason why is because when you increase the mass, the arrow is going to slow down significantly, and the trajectory of the arrow is, like, say if you look at your pin sights, your pin sights or your pins will start to separate a lot with a heavier arrow. The lighter arrow, the first 40 yards, the first like 3 pins are going to be very tightly together, and you will actually be able to get a couple more pins in there, but they're going to start separating significantly beyond 40 yards. So yeah, maybe you can shoot further and quicker with a lighter grain arrow, but what you are giving up when you make a lighter arrow is the momentum, the single factor that is going to penetrate better. This is going to lose a significant amount of energy because in actual physics, yes, you may be going quicker because your mass is lower, but because your mass is lower, you have a hell of a lot more drag, basically resistance to the air. The air itself is going to slow your arrow down significantly, and you are going to lose momentum. When people talk about kinetic energy, they are talking about kinetic energy from the bow, when your arrow launches off the bow. But nobody understands how much you're losing in flight to hit the animal. And what you get from the bow does not matter if you're losing all of it before the arrow hits the animal. That's the problem. So, and I'm not trying to tell everybody to go with a 640 grain arrow, but the difference is, yes, this is going to be significantly slower, and significantly is kind of debatable, but you are going to have bigger pin gaps. Your trajectory is going to be a little bit different compared to what you're used to shooting, but this is going to penetrate better. And you're basically retaining that kinetic energy. I don't like to talk about kinetic energy too much, but the momentum factor, this will get through the animal much better. If we are talking about making an ethical kill shot and getting through both lungs and a complete pass through, you want more momentum, you want more grains. That's what you're gaining, is a better kill shot. You need to understand your setup. Just because you're a great shot, if you're shooting a 300 grain arrow, I'm almost rest assured that almost no hunter is going to be shooting with 300 grains. It's just not practical. And I think a lot of people would understand that. But you're going to shoot fast as hell, but you're going to lose all that momentum and you're not going to penetrate. So that's the differences. You're going to have less speed with more mass, and you're not going to penetrate as much with less mass, but you'll get faster. Anyway, more mass is better for penetration. The next thing is the blade edge finish. Now, this particular one right here, I had actually shot into the ground. Now, the beautiful thing about that is I don't see any nicks. You know, like normally whenever you shoot kind of a cheaper broadhead, good example is this one. I shot the shit out of this and it hit the ground and everything. I don't know if you can see that, but that blade is jacked up. Now, one thing I don't really care for with these is that they're kind of made out of cheaper steel. I think this broadhead is done. Yeah, and the tip is completely bent over in this. So this broadhead is worthless to me. This one you can sharpen up extremely easily. I think a lot of people will just kind of trust that the broadheads that they get in the brand new packages says hunter sharpened or hunt ready sharpened or whatever. They're not. Like, even these ones from the Ranch Fairy, I felt them as soon as I got them out of the package, and they didn't feel sharp at all. And that's nothing on them. But you want to learn how to sharpen your broadheads. Sharpen your broadheads. Think about a dull broadhead is going to significantly decrease your penetration. Not only that, but again, even the ferrule diameter, everything. If your broadhead is extremely razor sharp, like hair popping razor sharp, then it's going to go through. It's going to be a better penetrator. It's going to slice through, and you're going to get deeper penetration. So that's blade edge finish. Type of edge bevel. So this is also based upon research. I'd like to give an example of woodworking. If anybody has done woodworking in their life, they probably understand what I'm about to go through. Aside from the fact that this is a 3-blade broadhead, each of these blades is a double bevel. The problem with a double bevel is that when you shove it into an object or you're trying to cut something, it's going to push away. You know, like the bevel is going this way, and the object that you're going into is going to separate in 2 different ways, if that makes sense. You might be able to slice a little bit with that, but it's not going to be as efficient as a single bevel. I've got the Ranch Fairy single bevel right here. And there's multiple advantages to a single bevel. One, it's going to retain its edge better, because with a double bevel, you have 2 angles, so it's actually a bigger angle. You know, it's not a 30 degree, it's like a 60 degree angle. This is a true 30 degree bevel. That's going to slice better. And on top of that, when we're talking about breaking bone, don't take this the wrong way, we're not shooting at bones. But what I'm talking about is when shit hits the fan, a deer ducks, or you make a bad shot, it happens, and you hit the big bones, the shoulder, whatever it may be. A single bevel is going to break the bone. Even doctors that, you know, when you go to if you break a bone and it starts to reheal or whatever, and you have to break that bone again for whatever reason, they use a single bevel. There's a reason for that. They don't use a double bevel is not an efficient penetrator. We're not even talking about bones now. Let's go back. A double bevel is not good because it's going to push. It's got 2 opposing forces rather than 1 opposing force. That's going to push this aside. Also, that creates torque as it's flying through the air. Even aside from this, if you have straight fletchings, this is still going to make the arrow spin in air. Think about a drill bit versus a nail. A drill bit is going to penetrate and get through stuff better than what a nail will. Nail, you have to hit it, you know. So, type of edge bevel. This is more efficient. More efficient. That doesn't mean that a 3-blade won't do the job, but all factors of penetration, including bone, a single bevel is going to do a better job than a double bevel, and that is just science. So anyway, the last factor I want to talk about, which is the bone breaking ability, is 650 grains or heavier. The research that has been done has mainly been done with big animals in South Africa. Now, the thing is, obviously we're not killing Cape buffalo or whatever. We're not shooting at an elephant, but the science shows that you need more mass to get through a bigger animal. I hunt elk. They're 4 times as big as deer, 5 times, whatever. If you're hunting moose, They're 5 to 6 times as big as a fucking deer. You need more mass in general. But a 650 grain, through the research that has been done, 650 grains with all of the other factors taken into consideration, they had 100% results. 100% of the time, it didn't matter how they hit the bone. It didn't matter, basically 650 grains was the bone breaking threshold. That doesn't mean only shoot 650 grains. You can still get through bone with less mass than that. You're just going to have less of a chance of doing it. And it goes down significantly when you go below 650 grains. It jumps significantly. That is the threshold. I was shooting a 200 spine arrow, and I went ahead and went down to 250. I might go back up to test because I'm using the EZV bow sight, and I want to make sure that my trajectory is right, because as of right now, they don't make a 210 FPS insert for it, as far as I know. But anyway, I went down just a little bit in mass. I had basically a 700 grain arrow with my 200 spine arrows. I went down to this, and I knocked off 60 grains just from doing that. But these, they go deep into the target too. I think that we need to take all these things into consideration. Even if you don't want to make an arrow that's going to break an elk's bone, you can still make a more efficient arrow to hunt for whitetail and still have a really good chance of, doing some damage and breaking a bone if you just so happen to hit that, even with something a little bit lower than 650 grains. But the whole point of this video is to look into Dr. Ed Ashby's foundation and try to do your research to understand all of the factors. You don't have to have every single one of these factors to be able to be an efficient archer, but if you have, it's actually pretty simple to make an arrow with a lot of these factors on it. And I think more people need to be shooting these types of arrows. And I think that we need to be understanding that we might need to give up shooting a long distance just for speed's sake, so that we can be more efficient hunters and killers. Get closer to the animal. That's what being a hunter, especially a bow hunter, is about, is becoming intimate with your environment and the animals that you are hunting. I think that's all it comes down to. Just be more efficient. That's all it comes down to. You don't have to make a 650 grain arrow, but you can understand and know your setup better, and you can be confident that you can take a shot and know that it's going to kill the animal rather than wound it. Let's not wound any more animals. Let's be more efficient killers. But thank you for watching this video. I know this was a long one, but I had to make it, and I will be making videos on all the other things here soon, so stay tuned.